Mm-hmm. 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 And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. Thank you for coming. And you're not here yet, but you will be. So it's been extraordinarily hot. So, what are you doing today? What are you doing? I'm going to go help my friend make some birdhouses. I just had this place has really interesting food. Sometimes it's amazingly good, and other times it's kind of, and that's life. You know? Sometimes it's amazingly good, and other times it's just. Question is, do you get stuck in that, or do you live your life to its fullest? Right? And one of the things to move yourself forward, to live yourself in a life that's better and better, is their number one is to say thank you, right? And the best person to say thank you to is the Lord. Who is the Lord? Now, if you let anybody tell you who the Lord is, you're wasting your time. If you let anything like this, I don't know what you call a catechism, a study guide, something like that. Right? So this is what one of my schools do. Personal study guide. That's what they call it. And so this section, this, I guess this is the summer, right? 2024 version. Senior adults. I guess that's what I am. A senior adult. That's the group I'm in. And the things we've been studying on June 2nd, God's promise of the faithful. God's promise of perseverance. God's promise of blessings. God's promise to make the holy nation. Right? God's promise of king. Right? God's promise, a new covenant. So God's promise of fruitfulness, let's say. Fruitfulness, let's say. God created you on purpose or porpoise. You know, if you ever go swimming with porpoises, they're really horny creatures. That's all they want to do is swim. And I was swimming around in the Caribbean, snorkeling away with my pirate girlfriend. Her name was Scar. I mean, that's not her slave name, but that's the name she had because she, during one of the downturns, fishermen either make a lot of money or they go broke. Right? It's a real gambling kind of thing. And I was living in a town called Tortola, an island, really island country. Right? It's probably, I would say, Long Island is probably bigger than Tortola, but Tortola is really a beautiful place. Do I have any? I think I might have some imagery of Tortola. When I was my largest, that's how there I am at my largest. I used to have to wear, curtains, right? And what was interesting, I never thought of myself as fat. My parents, I got, my parents always had to look like, movie stars, right? And so for 28 years, I had to take care of them, and they treated me like crap. They never said thank you. They never said I love you. They never said, oh, that was a good job. So there's really nothing I could do except look like that. And now I'm down to 210, and so I thought that was funny. And you know what was truly amazing during this period of my life, I had the most amazing girlfriends. I mean, I've always had the most amazing girlfriends, but that's not because of me. It's because of them. They're amazing. Me, I'm just me. Anyway, let's see what Jamie's saying. Yeah. Yep. So Jamie says, "Hi Al, swam with the dolphins in Punchberg Bay in South Africa." So, did that dolphin become your newest girlfriend? I can never tell the difference between a guy dolphin or a girl dolphin. They were all horny, right? And their skin is so slick. It's like just touching it is like, oh, that's erotic. You know, gratitude does go a long way, making others happy, the root to personal happiness. Thank you. Yes, I had a movie star parents too. My mother was a top model. They were married for 63 years. My parents, were married 75. And pretty much they hated, they treated each other like crap for like, 74.6 years. And they did the same thing. My mother was like Adolf Hitler and Marilyn Monroe put together. Let's see. Well developed frontal lobes. Yeah. Thank you. And that's why I had pretty amazing. Here's me and Michael, and we would be in any bar, any club, anything. Well, I was a dude, right? So, and Michael was just Michael. And see how this guy's looking at him. This guy here, he's looking at us like, because he was like trying to chat these girls up, and we walked in. We didn't even go to the girls. We just walked in, And my usual spot at this bar was like they had it roped off with, satin ropes. Anyway, and we were always nice to everyone. And everyone kind of hated Michael. You had to realize that he was going to walk out with like 3 girls, not just 1, 3. Me, I would, the girl who was normally my girlfriend, she would show up, when the crowd was there and we were at the bar. And she would just kind of sit over there and just watch it and just giggle, right? And then when Michael would walk out with 3 girls, I would go over to her and say, hey, sweetie. Right? And she did that because she loved doing that. And she would try to sneak in. She would try to she would sometimes look at me from outside through the window and to see if I would like play around or something, right? And one time she waited out there in the winter, like for an hour. And I said, this is too much. Went out there and she said, cold. I said, sweetie. And she started to go, you moron, how long was it going to take you to come out and get me? He was right. I was a moron, but she's the one who was in the cold. Anyway. Yeah, she was awful. But see, my mom was so funny. No one understood. See, everyone was scared of my mother, right? So that was number one. Number two, she had the driest sense of humor, and she was always drunk. So, whereas my dad was a Sicilian triple Virgo Air Force, not a Strategic Air Command bird colonel. I mean, talk about people being scared. They thought he had nuclear weapons in his pocket. But he actually, both my parents had a attitude of deep self-loathing, and it went along with my whole freaking family. And you know, here's Dave and me. So this guy, he could have been police commissioner. He had the pedigree. He had family as policemen. Way back to the movie Gangs of New York. And all his uncles and cousins and brothers, they would get high up in the police authority where the power was. And none of them became commissioner because that was just a political seat that you really couldn't do anything. But if you were chief of detectives, if you were chief of the ICU, if you were chief of the BI, if you were the chief of CSI, those were, or communications, those were powerful positions and very cha-ching, right? But let's see, what was his thing? I was Tortola, right? So Dave was always a very militarized. Oh, here's George. George, he was either Russian, Polish, or Ukrainian, or all of them put together. And this guy, this is his theater, Manhattan Theater Club, right? And he also had a thing called Theater for the New City. And he would start these theater entities up and get them going. And then he would, create a crew around him, and he would leave it with them and go on, right? So they would make this amazing empire, but he was still king. He was like the Alexander the Great of New York City theater. And one of his great claims to fame, this guy was in more Law and Orders than anybody ever. I mean, by light years. And he was like, he was never the dead guy, but he was like, the prosecuting attorney, the defending attorney, the guy who did the murdering, the doctor. He had all those roles. Ones that were just above scale, so he got paid like $2,500 a day, and he'd be there for 2 days, and that would be it. And he always got the best lines, right? So he'd have like 120 lines for the whole time he was there, and they were always. And he got Emmys. So he was an older version of Michael. That So he was one of my mentors. And look at George. You can't even tell who this guy is, but you can. Look how he's dancing around. That's why I took this picture. And there was a theater full of people, and his he had gone into this place, and he was moving everything in, and he was doing a poetry reading. I forget who was reading, but there were a bunch of important people out there in the audience who were going to give money to make the theater, right? And there was an explosion, right? And anyway, did he call the fire department? He called me. And so I showed up, and half the back wall was like on fire. And when he got in the building, I took a look at it. I said, "We're going to need to do this, need to do this, need to do this, need to do this." And I said, but the first thing we got to do is move in a bunch of fire extinguishers. Let's go down to Kitty and get a bunch of fire extinguishers. And so we did. And I put them everywhere there was going to be a fire. And so, walls on fire. Anyway, so I put the last fire out. Everything's in darkness. And he's dancing around like, oh, we're not going to die. And that's having a life. Ooh, so see this guy? He was Mr. Disco, right? And here is his wife, right? And this guy's screwing like 7 chicks a night. And there she is. And she's brilliant and smart. And he would never have gotten where he was. Look at him, right? He's smoking a joint, right? And me and her, so we were best buds, right? And he said, you should sleep with my wife. She needs it, blah, 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 blah. I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be her friend. I'm going to tell her how beautiful she is. I'm going to do all this stuff. You should. And then when she puts an axe in your head, I'll get her a lawyer, and then she'll be my girlfriend. So all these pictures you see like this, I took this. I did selfies before selfies. This is 1983, right? And my wife, we had a photo studio together, DNA, down in Allen, right? And when we separated, the reason why she separated wasn't anything other than she didn't want to be DNA. I said, you got top billing. And she goes, no, I just want to be D, right? When I have a show, I don't want anybody else's pictures hanging on the wall but mine. And she would never have a show unless she was with me because I built all these places and I knew all these people. And once people would say, you should be an artist. I said, I am. Look at these track lights. And that's why if you go see the movie, Robert Duvall is playing me in the movie La Squad, right? And so this is what a life's about. Life's about having, and so I was a newspaper photographer first and foremost, and an anthropologist, so you document everything, right? So I have about 100 of these. My father threw out most of my pictures, all the pictures I took at the Fillmore East, with me and Jimi Hendrix, me and The Who, me and, my father threw those out. Well, this is garbage. That's my dad. Now, when that happened, he had, I had built them a house. Right, real beautiful big house in a place called Remsenburg, right? And I just finished reading a book by this woman great writer, and she told a story about everything. It was great because she never really mentioned the place, but she described it completely. Remsenburg is up there in eastern Long Island. Thank you, Jess. Oh yeah. When I put the napkin on top of the food, I'm done. And when it's just bits, but if I'm licking the plate, don't try to take it away, might bite your hand. Yep, to the end. So many similarities. And, I tell people, oh, you read me so how you must be psychic. I said, no one's psychic. Maybe cancers. Cancers are psychic. He really was, but it drives them nuts. Anybody who has any of that talent, it drives them nuts. Me, what am I? I'm very observant. Right? So when I read people's palms, I'm just observing them, and I tell them what I think. I may coach it in a hokey mystic kind of way, so it's it's all theater. I'm a theater guy. And when people go, how do you do that? You must be psychic. I said, no. I said, everyone is like Mr. Potato Head. There's only 8 basic, everybody is on a spectrum, right? And there's 8 patterns. Now, 8 times 8 is 64 interlocutors, right? So, you have 1,800 lines or more on your hand. I only look at 8. And so when I'm telling people about it, what I'm doing is I'm observing them, their skin pallor, their breath, how they're standing, all of those kind of things. How they put their hand up, all that stuff. That's why I say, show me your, put the hand right with up like this, right? And so what does that do? When you do that, you know why they do that in court? Because your phalanges go to a certain place, which sets up a neurological dynamic where you can't lie. Well, you can lie, but you don't do it very well. And anyone who's good at observing, like Perry Mason, that was Perry Mason's big skill. When I used to watch that with my grandma, that's what he sucks as a lawyer, but he's really good at watching what people are doing. So anyway. Yeah. So that's kind of my shtick. A furred bull corner. Yep. Mm-hmm. And my brothers and sisters were total morons because my father said, "You're gonna do this," and no, because when I was born, they were pretty much all teenagers. They were all 10 years older than me. My mom had me when she was 50. I was a miracle baby. She did kill the other ones, meaning she kept having babies because she loved sex. When I would come home as a little kid and sleep I never got my own bed. I had to sleep on this ratty, fold-out bed that had a metal bar, so you could never be comfortable. It's like, and all through my life, there has been something like a metal bar that has always, and I see it that, right? And what it does, it kind of makes you stronger, right? And you find that one little comfortable spot where the metal bar isn't like right in the middle of your back. Anyway, so my dad would say, "Oh," and I would say, "Yes, sir, right away, sir," and go up and do whatever the heck I wanted to do. He did not realize I did that until I was 50. And all my brothers, so my dad was in the Air Force, and my mom liked it. We went all over the place, and that's why I stayed with my grandma. She went a baby all over the place, but the kids, she was like a queen, bird colonel. Always had a nice house, always had servants, right? Black people, always the Air Force, a lot of black servants, right? It was like the Air Force was started by, colonels who were from the South, right? So anyway, and my dad was like the south of Italy, the south of New York, the south of Long Island, And so anyway, and up until they always had this thing about my parents that they were just tore up by it. And they still are. And the worst thing you can be is tore up about your parents after they're dead because you can't do anything about it, right? Me, that's why I took, when I was about, how old was I? 30 something. And I just finished, my dad said, "You need to come." My father got my brother, who's really smart, really go-getter. My brother should have done his own thing, right? And then he would have stayed who he was. But my father, went down to see him when he was just about to get out of the military. He was in Germany. And this is my brother, right? So in high school, he learned how to type well, right? And so when he did, he thought he would never get, um, drafted. This during the Vietnam War. And I said, "Michael, what are you nuts?" He was living with me. And I was in an abandoned building. It was really nice. And he goes, "What do you pay for rent for this?" And I say, "Nothing." He goes, "What? Nothing? What?" I said, "Yeah, it's an abandoned building." He goes, "What? How can you stand doing that?" For the first month and a half that he lived with me, he thought it was the great. I had these great parties. This ain't the same place, but it's a theme that I had. So here's us, outstanding renewal, and so Dave is the military boy. I taught him to be an electrician. He was one of about hundreds of people I taught to be an electrician. So I put in legal meters in abandoned buildings, right? We took over the buildings using the Homestead Act of 1876, right? And so here's the crew. And we would go in the back of the building and we'd find the back door and we'd smash a hole in the cinder blocks that the city would put over everything, the windows and the walls and the doors of the first two floors. And we would put in a metal buck door with our own lock, right? And then we would put in the concrete wall, we would put a big mail slot in a little door and we'd write on a mail, right? And we would send ourselves registered letters to that address. We'd have like on the little mail slot. It was really big, right? It was about this big, and you could almost put a package in there. But you can only get your arm in that far, and this stuff fell down 2 feet. So if you really jacked your arm in there, you were stuck. You couldn't get out. And we had these little barbs on the inside. So if you really were to put your arm in there and try to get out, you would grab your arm and start trying to rip it off. I learned that from my mom. She was a piece of work. She did anything she could to make you suffer in pain and torment. And she did it to my dad for 75 years. And she didn't do it with arguing or anything. She just would sit there with a cigarette in one hand, and she would look like this. She always had a Manhattan in coffee. There was always coffee. And she was always bad, right? But she could do anything bad, So anyway. So here's a rainbow gathering that was in North Carolina. And rainbow gatherings were either really amazingly great or catastrophically terrible. And the one they do it around the 4th, right? If I had a cell signal, I'd call my rainbow friends and say how it was. I used to be the dude in the rainbow gathering. As I put on 3 really great gatherings. And the secret of a gathering is scouting, seed camp, and that's about it. And making sure that Kitty Village and CALM, Center for Alternative Living Medicine, something that a buddy of mine named Water, and about 4 other people started up. But he started it up. He was a Vietnam medic. And so my brother's like living with me. He quit college, and he's in New York, and he gets himself a job at some business. And, I told him the secret to not getting drafted, is never let your draft board know where you are. So he didn't, So when he, was staying at my place and realized it was an abandoned building, that would be some pictures of. Oh, here's Tortola. Here is one of my godsons, my good friend, Garrick. And he's like, if you go Wikipedia, who started the Rainbow Gathering? Garrick Beck, right? So anyway, this kid is his mother's. Merriby is his mother's, so he's a mother's child. He's not his daddy's child. So this is him at about 6, right? What does he look like? An old, pissed off man. So he became an electrical engineer because I took him for a year to try to straighten his ass out. And when he lived with me, he was pretty straight. He became enthralled with electricity. He became an electrical engineer and a physicist. But once he got into that, he took, instead of taking me with him, he took that with him. And there's Yoni. There's Joni. That was Garrick's girlfriend. And she was, you can't quite see her face, but her face looks just like this, right? So this is Tortola. So it's this island country in the Caribbean near St. Thomas. You fly into St. Thomas and you take a ferry here. And this is their capital city, right? Tourists. And it rains there. See how they have the high curbs? So the water comes and doesn't flood the houses, but goes down to the ocean. So this is where I met Scar, because I would hang out on, I don't know if, no. So here is our, this was an abandoned building, right? this was this building. This is what it looked like about 2 weeks after and it was all full of burnt out crap. The whole ceiling had collapsed in. Anyway, but this is what it looked like about 6 months, right? Kind of nice. And there's a painting I did of a place in Louisiana I used to live in, and this is a bayou. I did a painting of my parents, a photograph that they took on the day they got married in Biloxi. My dad was there putting together Air Wing in Biloxi. World War II hadn't started for the United States, but everyone knew we were in it. I mean, it had already started, Anyway, so they're there. And they had this picture taken when they got married, and they looked so happy. My dad was a major. He went from lieutenant to major like that, right? Because he's a great organizer, right? And so he was organizing these air wings. Usually a general does that. He was, they had to make him a major. Anyway, so this picture, right? Great photograph. And so around their 60th anniversary, made a nice painting of them, right? It was like maybe 3 feet wide by 2 feet high, and it was that picture, and it looked great. And basically, I'm there. It was a big celebration. It was their house in Waynesville, North Carolina. It was a really beautiful house. And my father wanted me to build it because I built him 2 other houses. He screwed me every time, and never said thank you. And so I said, screw you. No, I'm not going to do that. And so he, when I built those 2 houses, my mother drew what she wanted on a napkin. I, made a drawing and took it to the building department and said, I'm building this. And they would put their stamp on it, which meant instead of an architect stamp, the county stamp, the state stamp, that was a lot more. And that's because the head inspector had the same name I did. And he thought that was the funniest thing, right? And when I got, he couldn't believe I had a master's electrician license in New York I was in my early 30s. And I had it I got it in, when did I get it? I don't know. Well, I guess I was in my middle 30s and I got it in 82 in New York. But I already, I didn't need a license. Mike Stoll was my boss. Anyway, so I had this painting and my parents just loved it. I knew they'd love it, right? It's just, and so everyone brought them, gifts, my mom had bad legs, so my brother got her these compression shoes that nearly killed her, and my sisters got her like a sweater, and I brought this painting, right? And so my dad basically went and got a hammer and put a nail in, which he would never do something like this, and hung it right in the living room, right over the fireplace, right there, and all these beautiful windows of the mountains, and this painting offset it. And every time we walked in that room, we just saw the mountains and this painting, right? And my oldest sister used to really, really piss her off that painting was there. And, when my sister saw it, she goes, where did you get that? And I said, I painted it. And she goes, you don't know how to paint. And my mother said, oh, no, Al paints really well. He's the guy who got us in the art student league in New York, which is a really big thing, right? My sister had no idea what it was. And that's, my sister thinks they all think they're the most hot shit thing there is. And they're all self-loathing, poor little children, really sad. Right? So I talked to my other sister last night, and I call them all up, 2 to 3 times a month, right? My older sister, she will probably pick up, but not, I could call her 10 times, she'll pick up 4 times. If I called her 4 times, she'd pick up once, right? My brothers never picked up, since 5 years, right? He and me and my brothers, we were really close, and they're really depressed because they went for the Dala, and Prestige, and they're all older. They're all in their 90s or late 80s, and they never really. And they all had great talents and great abilities, and they just became cardboard cutouts of my parents instead of being who they were. And that was my bro, right? So he learned how to type in high school. He was living with me, but he was working for this company that, you know, and he got his W-2. That went to the federal government, and so they went and got him at his job, and he tried to run. It was like one of those things out of a movie, and they took him away, and so they drafted him, and he actually liked it, right? He didn't think he was going to like us, hated my father, but he actually liked it. So he went to basic. He actually liked it, and I would talk to him on the phone, and he actually liked it. He said, I really like this. I said, I might even stay in it. I see why Dad liked it. So anyway, so he goes through basic. He does real well. He's on the top 10 of the 40,000 guys who just went through basic. And before they ship you out someplace, you stay there for somewhere even a month until they figure out where they're going to send you, right? So since he could type, they sent him to the typing pool to type out orders. So he's got this big list and he's typing out orders, and he sees his name, right? And he's typing out his own orders. He sees his name, and it says Vietnam on the list, and he types in the little space Germany, because that was like the two places they were mostly sending, everyone to Vietnam. The next big bunch went to Germany, next big to Japan. Anyway, so he shows up and he's put in a division that's right on the line. They're like the Russians are going to nuke them first. They're the stopgap. But other than that, they don't have to do anything because they're expendable, right? And so the colonel who's running that place, he's like my father, but nuts. Right, so he flies helicopters, and so he's just flying all over Europe, going from Germany over to France and having lunch and getting laid, and he did, right, because he's part of NATO. Anyway, so my brother is running a whole division, and so he's living in his own apartment. He gets his girlfriend from high school to come and live and get married. He signs orders so he can go home and get married and take 2 weeks off and go to on his honeymoon. And he goes back. And when I went to visit him once, and his uniform, he had a tailor to make his own, and he looked better. Went in there, and they were having some big whoop-de-doo thing, and where everyone's running around had to like salute the generals and all that. And my brother had, he said, "This is my little brother, and I haven't seen him in a while. I'm going to go take him to lunch in town." And the general said, "Sure." So my brother got my father's ability to do stuff like that in the military. So he was going to stay in that. He was going to go to office because he went to college for one semester, and so they said, you're officer material. So anyway, he's running. He says, why should I be an officer when I am? Because half the stuff he's ordering is going out the back door to the mob. And so he's making a lot of money. He's got this big, beautiful house downtown. His girlfriend's there. He's wearing tailored clothes. And all the officers are scared of him because if they give him any kind of guff, he's the guy who signs people for like, okay, you're going to be in charge of cleaning the toilets. He doesn't have to clean the toilets, but he's got to be in charge of it. Anyway, so my brother understood, got to understand about this. And so again, my brother and I were real tight. And when I was in Europe, I would go hang with him. Not all the time because I was doing stuff. And so he basically was going to stay. And his wife didn't know. She wanted to go back to America. She couldn't stand Germany, blah, blah, blah. My brother could speak German, French, Italian. And she wouldn't speak any language, but, we're Americans. We got to be, So, it was, my father came and said, listen, I'm going to start this business. I want you to be my partner. come back home. Your wife wants to come to America. Come back home. Make her happy. I will get you an apartment. I will pay your rent, your electric. I'll pay all your bills and pay you starting. And this is like 1971 or two. I will pay you $45,000 a year and all your expenses. And that was like a bird in the hand, and it would make his wife happy. And so he did it because he was thinking of staying in the army and going to officer school, maybe. But this German guy really liked him, the guy who was buying all the stuff out the door. And he had these hotels. And he had his place in Monaco, gambling. And he wanted my brother to manage that for him. Right? Look at that. And that's my alien right there. And let's see, this scar. Let's see, which scar? I got so many scars on my head. Let's see, the big one right here is where I whacked. I met an angel, and he came up to my loft in Brooklyn, and he had this big bottle of wine that Jesus made, and we just kept drinking it, and it was the best. And you kind of got drunk, but you didn't have all the negative. You were happy and stupid, but you didn't want to throw up or feel terrible. You felt really great. And I kind of went unconscious, and I had this big marble table, and I whacked my head, right? The big one. And the other one is my sister tried to kill me when I was 3. And she tried to, it was Easter, and she had this metal bunny with big metal ears. And he had a little wheelbarrow with candy in it. And she picked it up by the wheelbarrow and tried to embed it in my head or poke my eyes out. And my Aunt Wynn, when I was on the floor bleeding and unconscious, my Aunt Wynn grabbed her to keep her from killing me. She tried to kill me a number of times. Well, people just seem to want to do that. I don't know why, but they kind of do that. I'll pick up where you left off and go on. Yep. Point to telling them of my deep love before they died. Yep. So I took care of them for 28 years, and I did that for that reason. Because they were never going to say, I'm sorry. They're never going to say, I love you. They were never going to say, you did a good job. But they could have a good time. Both my parents were party animals. They both liked having a good time. So I just kept having a good time with them for 28 years. And so that was, I took out my passive aggressive. So here's my sister, right? My dad. And they're just outside the courtroom, and he's given her the power of attorney over his estate. And she doesn't have a clue. Right? Look at that. Right? Where's another good picture? Oh, this is my sister to a T. My mother just said something really hurtful to my sister. And that was my sister's response. Now, my response to my mother's, and this is my mother saying something really nasty to my sister. And my sister is about to start bawling, just about to lose her shit. And this is a moment later. My mother, just whispering something in her ear that just, look at my sister's face. She is about to lose it, just a bawl right there, right? And my mother said, you're just a stupid, you're just a cunt, you're just a loser, you're just, That's that picture. And there's my sister's response. It says it all. Me, I just made them laugh. I remember I made my parents laugh so hard. We were at this really fancy restaurant. It was like the club. And everyone's dressed to the T's. And I'm dressed, I'm dressed like. Where is it? I'm dressed like this. That's me at the club. And I would wear these, and I went to the Goodwill, and I would just get sheets. My mom told me how to sew, and I'm sew them together, got a hole, put it on my body, right? We're there. And I'm there like so embarrassed. And everyone's come, and I've known everybody in this club since my dad. And I helped, wire their this, helped them with that, took care of their animals, blah, 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 blah. And you're not supposed to tip in this club, right? The waiters and the staff, you're not supposed to like even denote that they exist. You're supposed to treat them like slaves, right? When we'd have dinner, I would put a $10 bill under my plate. And when I pick it up, I'd spit on the thing and stick it on the plate and put it there. When I picked it up, and they'd see the $10. I did it every single time, right? And everybody else in that place. So when my parents got really sick, I was there all the time. This place was really nice. Tennis courts, golf course, pools everywhere. Not just one pool, but every 6 houses had a pool. And if you were really rich, you built your own pool, and you'd have a bug screen around the whole thing. Anyway, in the dining room, they had like this beautiful private dining room, like for people who would have private thing. And you could maybe 20 people. So it's a big table, 20 people could sit around it, and had this beautiful view of the golf course and the Intercoastal. I mean, this place had it all. It had a marina, had a golf course, tennis, it was one of the first really whip-de-doo gated communities. And my dad bought one of the model house that was like made out of, it looked like this, right? He got it for nothing, like 18 grand. He made a deal with them that you didn't have to pay, when you live in a gated community, there's this thing that you have to pay to keep the place up. Well, he was only paying $300 a month for 18 years. But when that last month turned over and he had to pay what everybody else paid, he had to pay everyone was paying $25,000 a month to live in that place. And that was about 6 months before the 2008 crash. My parents died in 2008. And part of it was that I got rid of everything in 2006. I knew the 2008 crash was coming. So I got rid of my stocks, my properties. I sold everything I sold everything but about four. The school I didn't sell, Deep Green I didn't sell, my two places in Florida I didn't sell, right? The place in the Keys and the place in Stewart. And both those places, they weren't like mine to sell. I had partners, buddies that I went into these endeavors with because I just, I found them. I made the deal. I kind of bought them, but more or less I was like, rent to own. And then when real estate was starting to go up a bit, and I always made it look like shit on the outside, like the abandoned buildings and really amazing on the inside. It was like that. And because I knew, so anyway, both of those things, I had all these lawyer people I worked for, and some of them were my friends. And so I got those guys to get them and, give me some dreckle, and they put their name on the deed and no one's going to take it from them. And so then we could really make it look nice and have a good time, and they can put their big boats there, blah, 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 blah. And that's kind of how I've always lived, right? Because I don't need to impress anyone. My dad always needed to impress, right? That's why I married my mom, because she was like Marilyn Monroe until the day she died. It's like, wow. So you pick up where you left off and go on. You move forward. That's what you're doing. We're moving forward, right? The name of the bus that the Dharma Bums was on was called Forward, right? So let's see. Oh, yes. So you saw the pictures of the beautiful Caribbean place, right? And so in that town there, the big thing was the dock. How everyone in Tortola made their money. There were two cities, two towns, the capital and this other city on the other side that was facing St. Thomas, right? Anyway, and this other place was facing kind of towards Jamaica, Kingston, right? But it was further away. You could see St. Thomas, you couldn't see Kingston. Anyway, so and so it had this big dock from back in the day, and it got very famous and profitable um, during the French and Indian War, right? Because that war was more about. Go read the book Captain and Commander. They made a movie with it, right, with Russell Crowe. And there's about 10 books of that. And it was, both France and England were sea power. So, yeah, they had really horrible, bloody, terrible um, battles in Quebec and Ontario and places like that. But they were right on the water. But the real war, that those two countries were going at each other was trying to destroy each other's navies. And England had already, Spain was, the big power on the sea, and little upstart England, you know, with the help of God and a hurricane, wiped out the Spanish fleet. So, but the Spanish made the best ships. They weren't the best sailors, but they made the best ships. So anyway, Tortola was like this one place that everyone could go into without getting blown up, and because it wasn't, it was English, but not really, right? And because it had no roads or anything, and it was kind of weirdly shaped, and it had these two big ports, and then it had over 1,000 of these beautiful coves all around that a big boat could pull almost right up there and offload stuff onto the beach, right? They come in the high tide and they kind of go real, and the beaches were like no rocks, no nothing, just beautiful. So they come in really, not like super fast, but pretty fast, and like onto the beach. And then when and they had these stays that they would jump out and stick on. And so when the tide would come down, the boats, like right there, they could offload anything, put it up there in the bushes. And when the tide came back in, they could be gone. So this island was making a lot of money, right? So, Miss Jessica, could I have a little more coffee, please? No problemo. So you're making your boss pay?
Do what?
You're making your boss pay for his soda?
I pay for myself.
I used to work for a company called Restaurants Associates,
Okay.
and they built really like Window on the World. You know about Windows on the World?
I think so.
It was the big fancy restaurant on top of the World Trade Center,
Okay.
right? So I was their go-to guy. I mean, I built things for them. I was more their lighting designer. But whenever he got stuck, like he started these things, he tried to compete with McDonald's by having German food.
Okay.
It was,
like German food.
I mean, it was great.
McDonald's.
It was great because he had these bratwursts that were unbelievable, and he would sell cold cuts.
Not a schnitzel.
So it was a brilliant idea, and it really depended on where that store was. Some of them did chicken, right? Others, not so much. You didn't want to put one of those in the South Bronx, off of the, FDR Drive. But anyway, so he would have me go when it was just about to open, go there, finish everything up, and kind of get it going for the first month, right?
Okay.
And so we did this one down near Wall Street. All these pretty girls who were the, secretaries would come in, and they said, "Can you give me 4 slices of this?" Because they were making like, $35 a week. And I would give them like 50 pounds.
I mean, it's going to go to waste.
Right, exactly. That's how I looked at it. I always got a story, right? And, when Jesus, he could parse, when he was 13, he was blowing away all the rabbis in the big whoop-de-doo temple, right? And so, and the Christians, in the Old Testament, that's the, no, the Jews, it's 3 books, the Torah, the Tablet, and the Kabbalah. And you got to really know the relationship with God, you got to read those books. Thank you, handsome. But long story short, the girls I did all this for, right? Mm-hmm. Years later, they became executives
Okay.
and would go to these fancy restaurants and say they would tell him every single time, like and he said later on, because that actually made me money because he said exactly what he said. That stuff
Absolutely.
that was going to be thrown away,
Yeah.
and now I have
Making money.
these people became unbelievable clients of his.
I mean, if you just treated people,
Like that.
like you exactly,
Right.
like they were important people, no
Right.
matter who they were,
Yeah.
you took care of them. Sometimes comes all the way
And
back
it
around.
totally always does.
It does come back
Every
around.
time.
Have a good day, sir.
Yeah, baby. Thank you for the coffee, handsome. So anyway, so I got like a stream of about 20 stories going on here at once, and that's how Jesus would he would give parables, and he would be all over the place, and then tie them all up at the end. So I'm tying them up because I'm sure I'm running out of juice here. Yeah, getting there. So I was in Tortola, beautiful place. I fit in totally. And my scam, my skit, how I made my living is that on the big thing, the big pier in the Capitol, it was big. I mean, it was almost half a mile long. And it was really wide, like almost a football field wide, because these big boats, big boats would come and offload stuff and put it there. And it never quite, the other great thing, it only rained at night. And so when these big boats would come in and other boats would take it to other places, that's what Tortola really made its money, because that's why they were they would have duty coming in and going out, and it would just sit on that dock, and they would make $1,000. So they had serious money. They had really great health care for everybody. They had everyone. It's the only place in the Caribbean where the black people were living large, right? So and were not being taken advantage of, right? So because that place was started by well-educated, smart slaves that English brought to Haiti after the Spanish did. After they killed there were 6 million people on Haiti, right? And they ripped it apart and just caused disease and that's why the indigenous people died. So Africa's just across the water over there. They went over and got some black people and made them slaves, and they had a revolt. Why Haiti's in a mess that it is because they're still being punished for that revolt. And so they could never, the Europeans could never come and put them under slavery, but they could treat them like shit and do everything geopolitically to screw them, right? And they still do that, right? That's why they aren't. Who do you think all those gangs were trained by? The CIA, MI5, you name it. So the smart black folk went over, and nobody wanted to go to Tortola because it was a big volcanic rock. It was all covered. It was beautiful and nice, that picture I show you. But there was no way they could put roads. There's no way to, the European idea of squaring things off and, owning the real estate. Well, there was no way of doing that because it was just, and those beautiful beaches, there was no way, because as soon as you went into where the green was and went in 300 feet, it was like this, right? And that picture kind of really shows it. That's that picture. So here's Ireland. Here you go, buddy. Here's Ireland. This is on the west coast between Skibbereen and Glendore. Glendore is almost halfway, and it's right where on the West Coast Highway of Ireland, right between Skibbereen and Glendore, there's a road that goes right up to Tipperary, goes straight up that mountain, and it's where that bar, it says the highest bar in Ireland. So here's the beach pictures. Mm, oh, here we go. See what I mean? This is Tortola. See, you got these beautiful beaches, and then it's like goes straight up, right? All the way around the island is like this. There's no way of really, really. This is this my friend of mine built this road because he wanted to build a hotel up this place, right? So he he tried, and all he could do is build a road that he could bring trucks up, and they built a cable car. So this we're in a cable car that he built, and you never really felt. I mean, this look how high this thing is. It's like 300 feet up in the air, and from one tower to the next is like a quarter of a mile, on shoelaces, and it was amazing. I don't know if it still exists, but that's why the Europeans couldn't take Tortola. But it had amazing beaches all the way around, right? So, and this is the capital, right? And it had no sidewalks, and because everyone rode bicycles, and it was only the guys who had businesses that had pickup trucks, and stupid tourists. They had golf carts. They had electric golf carts for the tourists who couldn't walk. But they put these bumps in them, so every 20 feet, you boom, bam, boom, bam. And along the side, between that big curve, and it was about 3 feet where there was no fence. So if you tried to take your golf cart, and you couldn't fit that, and so what would happen is this happened almost every day. Stupid white people would try to drive in that. So it would go boom, 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 but it would still. And so it would tip it over. The tire would hit that big curve and it would flip into that. And it was a $6,000 fine to do that. And they had signs everywhere: don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And like virtually every day, at least one, if not 10, would do that. I mean, these guys just took the white tourist people to, right? And when you were taking the ferry over, it was legal, and not just legal, it was almost mandatory that you would have this rum punch drink. And so you get on and they put a glass in your hand, right? Glass, and so by the time you got off that boat and you went to customs, you were sloshed, right? And if you were sloshed going through customs, there was a they didn't call it a fine. It was more like a fee, right? It was called the drunk fee. And so, but if you got that, then you could walk the streets drunk legally, right? But, New Orleans has that, right? Now, you can't be sloppy, stupid drunk because they then really take you they treat they put you in jail in chains, and you had to pay a lawyer like 10 grand, and he gives half that to the judge, and then you get a like $25,000 fine. I mean, they just took the white people. That's why I love these guys. I would just be hysterically laughing about all of this, right? And so that picture there, this guy who has the cable car, his father and grandfather were like, the noble people, the noble family, because they really said, let's take it to white people. We got it here. None of the white people want this place. This is ours. They're never going to take it from us. They don't want it. But they like these beaches. And then after World War II, all the white people got these big yachts. And they would just come from Miami or St. Thomas. And they would stop off at that big pier and get provisions. And all the provisions were right there. They needed to go to the store. The captain of those boats would ask the people kind of what do you want, Bob? It's just like what Kroger's is today, And they would get the boat in Miami or what, and they would, when they were signing things. So what, on Monday, what do you want to eat? Tuesday, and they would get it and they would radio to these guys and they'd have it all ready and just put it on the boat and the captain would go, right? So that usually took an hour, and there were all these stores on along this thing, and then into the capital, just made for those people who were going to roam around for an hour or two to buy lots of stuff, right? And everything about Tortola was wired to take advantage of white, stupid, rich people. It was just unfriggin' believable. So what I would do, there was this great tiki bar on that, and my friend owned that place. He owned about 5 little Airbnbs, would be the best description of them. And he had this hotel on top of the mountain. And he had about 10 of these beaches where these boats would come, right? And he'd already have it hooked up with the captains, and they would come and they would, dock, not dock, but throw down the anchor and put out the little rubber rafts and take them. The people would take stuff and they would set up encampments. And he would have these beautiful, thatched concrete huts with, carpet, a bathroom, it was just mind frigging boggling. He had this swimming pool that was brilliant. The swimming pool, back there, and a beautiful thing, and the tiki bar and the restaurant, and you just kind of walk into the pool and went down, and then you walk to the other end of the pool, and it went into the ocean. I mean, this guy was unfreaking believable. Anyway, so my gig was I would hang out at tiki bar, and and I would nurse one, rum punch, but not too well lubricated, and eat fruit, And his mother made these great breakfast pasties, these great little flaky, what pasties are. They're like an English, Pakistani kind of thing with stuffing, meat and veggies, but you can put anything in there. Anyway, so I would nibble at that, and I would play chess with this guy, right? And he was Muslim, and he's always telling me stories about, how Islam and Black Africans, invented everything. And he was right, right? That's where I realized that I was a African American that's melanin challenged. More than one Black person has told me that. You're African American. Anyway, so I'd be, in the tiki bar, and there were no walls. It's just a thatched hut, and you kind of, if you were on the pier, you would kind of almost walk through this thing. And there were tables, and there was also on one side looking out at the ocean, there were high chairs and things, so you wouldn't fall into the water. So anyway, I'm sitting there at my table, and I had these, nice, comfy seats, and I'd be reading a book. He was a big reader. He had a whole, a library there that you could go pick a book up from. And plus, he was the other guy I knew who had instruments. He was a big musician, just hanging on the wall. And if you could play, you could pick it up and play. So anyway, I'm sitting there, and I had my nice little tablecloth with little half moons and stars, and my little sign saying "Reader Advice." What's Reader Advice? Oh, let me read your palm. And then I would, give them a full Monty, right? Well, does it cost anything? I said, no, it's a donation, whatever you want to give. And, he would drop a 20 or a 50 or a Benjamin into my magic hat when I first would get there. And he said, this is the starter, right? So I get 10% of whatever you make in here off the bat. I said, okay. So, but it never quite, his 10% never equaled the money he threw in that hat. So, but I would do pretty good. I would always walk out of there with a couple $100, and I wouldn't stay any more than 5 hours, because he'd always take me someplace to go fix something for him. That was really what I was, because I wired a lot of his stuff out there in the boonies with photo panels, and this one photo panels weren't around. This is late 70s, early 80s, and so and we had these things. We would go to Kingston in his boat, and it was this great marina junkyard. It had everything, kind of anything you wanted, that ran on 12 or 24 volts, right? And they had all these windjammers. This was a company in Idaho or someplace that, it's the wind powered for farmers, right? But then they realized boats could use them too out there. And so they had a version of that, and like industrial size all the way down to guy with sailboat, right? So I got a bunch of those that were like funked, and rewired them. And a guy, if Kingston had been closer, if I could have just jumped on a boat and go over there, it only took me 20 or 30 minutes. It took almost 3 hours to get over there. So it's not an everyday commute. But we go over there. He had family over in Kingston. And so, we would go over there and have a really good time. And his one cousin had a recording studio that Jimmy Cliff cut his first records, that made him famous, part of the and the Wailers would I saw those guys. And when, so I worked in recording studios, and this guy got a Studer machine, and, he just got it from somebody and they brought it over in pieces. And I put it back together for him. And he was like, and another thing I'm really good at was Harman B210 electric organs with Leslie, and I would fix a lot of those. So I go over there, I'd make a nice chunk of change and come back with a few bales. And all these guys knew all the cops, everybody. So it was, you could do whatever the frick you wanted if you were with these guys, and that's being the dude. Meaning, so you don't have to be those guys. You're the dude with those guys. And that picture of me and Michael, that was it. Michael was the the person who everyone was looking at, but I was the guy. I was the dude, right? So, and that still exists today, right? So it's a dynamic that most people don't understand, because you have to be in sync with God's love. Cilantro brother, you're out of here? Okay. See you, James. I gotta go too. So I still got it. Let's see, what time is it? Yeah, I got in there 10 minutes to finish at least the Tortola story. So I'm in that place, and this amazing woman walks in. I mean, just a goddess, right? And she walks in, and she walks in sideways, right? And it's like, and so my buddy goes, "Oh, Scar, how you doing?" And she goes, "Oh, good, Robbie." And she goes, "Oh, how big is one?" And so I've been there for a long time, and I've never seen this woman. And he goes, and he didn't call her Scar, Ska. And so, so I didn't get the Scar, Ska, right? So anyway, he goes, "Ska, let this guy read your palm." And so she comes over, and she's always walking like sideways, right? And so she's standing there, and I'm looking at it, and she goes, "Whoa." And she looks at all my little accoutremento, and she sits down right in front of me, and she has a scar that goes like from here all across her, from here all the way down across her eye, and across the top of her nose, and kind of, stops at this side, right? And it's like the Grand Canyon, and her eye is a hole, right? But she has a patch on it, so, and the patch pretty much hides that. I mean, you can see this, the scar starting, like up there, and then, then there's the patch, and you don't see the hole or the big deep part of the scar. And I don't say anything. And so I do her tarot cards, I do her runes, I do her, and she is like, she goes, "Wow, how come I've been here for the last 6 months." And she goes, "Well, I've been out of town." And I said, "So what do you do?" She goes, "I'm a captain of a ship. I'm a pirate." And I said, "Pirate?" She goes, "Yeah, a pirate." And she goes, "You want to see my ship?" And I said, Yeah. So I got there, and what she has this I don't know if you guys have ever seen a crab boat, right? And they put these pots down, right? And so that the crabs crawl in, and then they pull them up. And so basically, I don't know if you've ever seen a real commercial tugboat. It's mostly a gigantic diesel engine that can, drag gigantic container ships. This little boat, big propeller, anyway, and a lobster boat, commercial one anyway, is just like that. And so its whole deck is flatter than flat, and it has a big crane on it, that can pick up these pots, and they stack them like 60 feet up in the air. So that crane has to be able to pick something 60 feet up there and move it and drop it in the ocean, and out there, not like right next to the boat. And where they pick the pots full of crabs is in the back, and they have this big door, and the crane picks it up and puts it right on this ledge. They open up this thing and they tip it, and all the crab go into a gigantic freezer, right? I mean, gigantic, enough to, 300 of these pots all full of crab gets pulled in there, and there's a place out in the Caribbean where it's just chock a block full of crabs. So she does that. That's her main thing. But when she is, there's times when she can't do that. And so she'll go from island to island to island to island on that big crane, just like at Tortola, picking stuff up and delivering it to someplace else, right? Especially if it's time sensitive. Gets paid really good for that. And then she moves other stuff, right? And she has her own island. Anyway, so, she's showing this boat to me, and I'm like just amazed with all the kind of special little gizmos and gadgets that are on this thing. And she goes, "So you're the guy with that has been helping him with his alternative power?" And he says, "I really need you." I said, "Oh, really?" And so she goes, "So what are you doing in the next couple of days?" I said, and he's looking at me like, and so because we come back and we have a nice lobster, because she's delivering him lobster, right? Because he is the main guy of buying and selling the high end stuff, right? So she's like laying off on all these lobsters on him. So anyway, and because he's one of the only guys who's got the facilities to keep them without dying, right, or being frozen or freezing them. So anyway, he's going, so we go to her island. It's beautiful, and so pretty much right away we're it. So as soon as we decide we're sweet on each other, and I mean we already decided that when I was looking at her boat, because she kept rubbing up against me. Anyway, so we're at her place, right? And she takes off the thing, and I'm like, there is no eye there. And this is gigantic Grand Canyon. And she goes, "This is why I'm a pirate." I said, "What? To be a pirate, you got to do that?" I said, "No, I didn't do it to myself. I got into a fight." And this guy picked up a bailing hook and got me across the face. And then I said, "What'd you do to him?" And she goes, "A lot worse than this." So, for the next 6 months, that was my girlfriend. And she was, the female version. Let's see if I can. So, that place that looked really good. This is what it looked like just 4 days after we cleared out. We kicked out the back of the wall and just scraped all the burnt out crud into the lot in the back. And then we started building. And that's how I looked at that. Right? And like, within a week, it was looking like that. And so as Jamie says, you fall down, you pick yourself up, you move forward. That's what it's about. Well, anyway, I got to go. Things to do. I'll tell you more about ska later. Love you guys. Do. I hit the wrong button. Cancel. They changed everything.